everybody, welcome to the Trinity Happy Hour, the show where we talk about life, share stories, and explore the God who is love. I'm Kester McCullough. My co-host James Lee told me I get to do all the talking this week. He's going to take care of the editing and everything like that, so you're stuck with me. But, lucky for you, this week's episode is going to be pretty short. We're trying something new here on the Trinity Happy Hour. I think we're going to call it the Trinity Happy Minute. They're going to be shorter episodes, maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes long. We'll see how it plays out. But we just want to share with you a thought of the week or an inspiration or something that we've been chewing on or wrestling with or has been on our heart recently. And hopefully it'll give you something to think about and reflect on throughout your week. We're going to intersperse these with our normal shows. Our normal show runtime is about an hour, sometimes an hour and a half when we have these really good interviews. So some weeks we'll be doing these shorter episodes, some weeks we'll do our normal length episode, but let us know what you think, if you like it, if you don't like it, any thoughts you have. We would love to hear from you. So we'll jump into this week's Trinity Happy Minute. So I thought about this while I was driving earlier this week. I don't know why it popped into my head, probably because it's about driving, but I was driving down the road and I just remembered as a youth, I forget if it was some pastor on the radio or a pastor at a church or vacation Bible school, I don't know. But I remember somebody trying to explain that God's laws were like the rules of the road. They were like traffic laws, that they may make driving seem like less fun, but they're really there to help us and keep us safe. Now, as a kid, this didn't sound that great, and it certainly didn't make me any more inclined to want to follow God's quote-unquote less fun rules in order to keep myself safe or whatever. But I thought about this randomly the other day, and it struck me finally, after years of maybe sitting latently in my unconscious or subconscious, why saying something like this is not only unsatisfying, but actually can be confusing, and in some ways is just plain wrong. Now, hear me that I'm not trying to bash the person who said this. I get where they're coming from in trying to explain, you know, these truths in a way that makes you want to accept them or align them with something else in life. So you say, oh, okay, that makes more sense. I get that. I'm not trying to bash them. I am trying to bash the analogy, though, and I'm trying to bash other analogies like it because I think there's a serious issue. You see, every theological claim ultimately makes some claim about who God is. I don't mean that as a tautology. I mean, when we make claims about hell, salvation, the atonement, baptism, the law, anything we make claims about in the religious realm, we are talking about who God is. Every theological statement that is made carries with it, and almost always unspoken, a statement about who God is and what he's like. I think there's two reasons for this and why I think this. The first is that Jesus is the interpretive center of all truth, and he is the ground of all theology. So any claim about truth has to relate to Jesus. Second, you can't really talk about the way something is without talking about the one who created it. So when we talk about any of these things, we're inherently talking about God. It's like you can't talk about art without talking about the artist, at least in some way. Basically, theological truths do not and cannot exist in a vacuum. They can't just be contained as separate little truths about themselves apart from the truth of who God is. They reflect an image of God, and that's either good or bad, and it's either accurate or inaccurate. So saying that, back to the analogy is that God's law or rules are like the rules of the road or traffic laws, in that they're there for our benefit so we don't crash and kill people, and that's why we all have to follow them. So the analogy tries to explain why we have rules, right? Why God gave us law, and tries to convince us that we should accept them. It's really in our best interest, right? But the most important truth about the rules in this analogy is glossed over and maybe even hidden. It's implicitly there, but it's not actually spoken in the analogy. And when you think through it, you come to this problem, because it's not about the rules themselves. It's not even about the reason for the rules. It ultimately is about who gave the rules. Where do the rules come from? So in the analogy of traffic laws, where do the rules come from? They come from some kind of government entity, something that is by definition unable to love, something that is bureaucratic, something that is unrelational, inherently impersonal. I'm not saying the government's bad. I'm just saying that's what it is. By definition, the government cannot love you. And then you look at God, and God, at his very core, the very nature of his being, is relational, is love. He's a good, good father. So when you compare these two things, there's this huge discrepancy. Now, did the person who said this analogy believe that God was like the government, that God was unrelational and distant and could not love and was bureaucratic and was cold and calculating and blah, blah, blah? I don't know. I don't think so. I doubt it. But if they didn't believe that those two things were similar, then why would you make a statement like this? We often don't think through the conclusions or implications of our beliefs on the character of God. But that effect is real. You can't know and hold on to the fact that God is a good, good father and explain that his rules are like these governmental laws. So when you think about the rules of the road, or these rules we have to follow when we're driving, they don't inspire trust or comfort or hope or belonging or intimacy, because God's identity as relationship, self-giving love and relationship in the Trinity is gone from that. It's not even a thought. The best you get out of following these rules that are handed to us by a government body like this is that you don't die, or maybe you don't get a ticket, or you don't get thrown in jail. And that's why you end up following them. There's a threat of force against your person or your bank account. And that's why you choose to follow or not follow these things. And we're going to compare that to God. The rules can only be accepted if you know the rule giver. The guidance for life can only be enjoyed if you know the one who guides. Without a clear picture of God's face, his nature and his character, ultimately his goodness, there is no point beyond fearful self-preservation for following these rules. So this is just one small example of how so often our theology messes up the who of God. We're trying to figure out the what and the how, and we mess up and we let go of the most important part, the who. There is nothing more important to get right. Jesus came specifically to correct us on this very matter of messing up the who of God. So I would encourage you this week, think first about who God is, especially as revealed by Jesus. Remember the question of all questions, who is Jesus? The most important question. Every answer to every other question is wrapped up in the answer to who is Jesus. Think through the implications of your theology or your beliefs. Think about the face they paint on God, the picture of God they paint. And finally, remember, it's better to be sure about the character of God than to be sure about this or that theological fact. Well, that's all we got this week for our very first Trinity Happy Minute. Thank you so much for tuning in. Check us out on trinityhappyhour.com. Make sure to sign up for our mailing list. That's where we send out news and announcements about new shows or what we're up to. We also have a contact page on there if you want to send us a message or send us some feedback. We would love for you to do that. So shoot us a message, tell us what you think, give us your critiques and criticisms, but pull the punches. I'm pretty sensitive these days. However you found us, please rate and review us on there. Give us some stars, write a review. Those reviews really help with our visibility and getting the show out there. We're also on YouTube these days. We're back posting our episodes on YouTube, so check us out on there as well. And share the show. If you enjoy what you're hearing here, Share it with anybody else you think would enjoy it, family, friends, whoever. We would love to get the word out there about the Trinity Happy Hour and get the message of God's goodness, love, and inclusion to as many people as possible. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you next week.